Hello everybody and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory, prices, and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started each Top 10 by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Hello.
Ruben Bressler.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How you guys doing?
Doing very well. We're back to the top tens.
Yeah.
We're trying to get back into the stream of things. I don't know.
I was an idiot and I bought movie tickets and didn't think about it. So
it's cool, man.
But it was Infinity War, and now I'm shook. Now I'm shook.
Spoilers.
I'm just saying I'm shook. I'm just saying I'm shook. I'm not gonna say anything else.
The rule for me is if it's a major release. And the definition I have of that is if it's over $100 million in the opening weekend or something along those lines, 20 days. You got to wait 20 days until you're public with spoilers. That's what I did for all the Harry Potter movies. It's what I've done for all the Star Wars movies, all the Avengers movies. 20 days, then you're free to start sharing your memes because you're all hilarious and all. And I know it's going to be tough for you to keep it in your pants for 3 weeks. But the length of the Dominaria Kickstarter plus 2 days. You got to
plus dubs.
You got to keep it in for 2 days. But it is a great movie. If you have the backlog of 24 hours worth of Avengers movies, and then also if you happen to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or any of that other stuff.
I mean, it's had 10 years of prequels alongside television shows and other prequel types things to lead to this point. It's very interesting.
My point is you're forgiven. It's okay. Hopefully you're emotionally ready for this episode.
Man, I wasn't. I'm telling you, I was not ready for what was going on at the movie theater. It's crazy. All right, that said, we get started each week with our top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most luxuriant in letting us know what card, or rather what mechanic, we did not choose as one of our top 10 worst mechanics. Ruben?
This week's most luxuriant comment comes from Goldstorm07 from the YouTube, who writes, "My least favorite mechanic has to be Infect. I doubt I have to explain why, but whenever I use it, I feel like I'm cheating because of how easy it is to get to 10 poison counters almost instantly. On the other hand, given it's the Phyrexian mechanic, it makes sense to give them something hateable to further their status as the big villains."
Wow.
Oh, man.
Not bad.
Yeah. In fact, we had a number of comments from people who felt that Infect should have been on our list. And Infect definitely screwed me up a little bit. You know, I came back to the game when Infect was in Standard, and I was playing a mono-black Infect deck for a while. And after Infect rotated, I was like, wow, this is hard. Like,
I gotta go to 20?
I have to count to 20? Like, this is work. Whereas before it would be like, you know, you'd play a Vat Mother, you'd put like an unblockable thing on her, and you'd go to town. And yeah, definitely. And even kind of trying to teach new players. I remember trying to teach my boyfriend at the time how to play, and then like we would take him to like normal games, and he'd be like, "They're at 10. Why aren't they dead?" And it's like, baby, that's a whole other ball game.
it's a different life total. We don't talk about that one.
Yeah.
Oh, for what it's worth, I'll stick up for Infect. I thought Infect was really interesting in that it took something from long ago and made it relevant again, which was poison. It kind of fixed the sins of the past, which was you can get rid of poison counters. You can never get rid of poison counters in Standard Magic around, or at least the last iteration of it. And there was gameplay. You know, there was really interesting gameplay in that this 1/2 with Infect is technically a 2/2, but if I play a 2/2, I've essentially trumped your 1/2. Right. But you leave mine smaller. You know what I mean? Like that weird.
It deals combat to players better, but to creatures and planeswalkers worse.
Right.
It was really an interesting ability when they came out with it, because it's Wither plus poison, which is super interesting. Turns out it didn't translate as nicely as they'd hoped, I guess.
I mean, we have Rancor in Standard.
I can understand. Yeah, I understand why it's so hated, though. I get that.
Well, I think that's one of those mechanics.
More on Aaron's lists of like hated abilities because I just hate them, or Evan's list of hated abilities because they're too powerful.
Well, I think like a lot of mechanics, I think it only got worse or better in older formats. Where once you're looking at things like Berserk and you're looking at Invigorate and you know Gitaxian Probe, where you can essentially clear the way, you know, and it was really I think the older cards that made it so scary. I remember it being pretty tame in Standard. I don't remember it being overwhelmingly powerful in Standard. But I think there were just so many older cards that just really made it get out of hand, and still do if you play Legacy Vintage. I mean, modern Infect is still a thing, thanks to Emma Handy, and it's terrifying.
Is there Vintage Infect?
It has been known to creep up every now and again, but even Legacy Infect is still very much a thing. And slap Berserks on something or Invigorates, and it's like, oh Jesus!
Like, I appreciate that it's a different axis while still being just, creatures in the red zone. Just like you're ultimately just attacking with stuff. Like, yeah, it's
you're
on a different thing.
You're playing 1/1s for 2 a lot of the time. It's usually, I mean, it's fair magic pushed to the brink of unfairness.
Yes. Well, that's Goldstorm07. Please hit us up on one of our social channels so we can get you your $50 gift certificate. Thank you very much to CoolStuffInc.com, of course, for providing that to our awesome winners. But this week, we're going to talk all about Dominaria cards. Now, it's a good thing we haven't said much about Dominaria or Dominaria cards, or spent 15 hours in a room talking about Dominaria cards.
There isn't 8 hours of content available at youtube.com/.
And a 5-minute blooper reel, which doesn't have nearly as much views.
Man, well, but our top 10, however, and first of all, I was expecting a lot more overlap. We have very little overlap tonight. We kind of have our own options, which is going to be really cool. We have a lot to go through, so we're going to try to keep it snappy. But that said, Ruben, what's your number 10?
I'm going to start out with one of my favorite limited cards from the set, because I got to play a lot of limited this last weekend at Grand Prix Columbus. I had a ton of fun in both sealed and draft, and this is a card that I want. Yeah, I did. I think this format's
that's great.
I'm kidding, because I saw that you weren't doing as well as you would have liked.
Sure, and I was winning at like less than 40% clip and still having the time of my life.
Okay.
Because this format is so great. It's so during the set review, I said that I thought white was going to be too good and the green was garbage. Turns out it's completely backwards. Green is insane, and white is I think borderline unplayable. Like it's just.
I think we're playing different limited formats. Is all I'm saying.
We might be playing different. Look, I am very stupid, and did not have this limited format figured out, and had no success, and I was not doing very well. But I was still having a good time with it because of I think that it's a really well put together limited format. And when I open a sealed pool now, there is one card that I want to see in my sealed pool. One card that I wish to have 2, if I can, 3 copies of, and that's Skittering Surveyor. So Skittering Surveyor is a 3 colorless 1/2 artifact creature construct. When Skittering Surveyor enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it in your hand. Then shuffle your library. Very simple. It's Pilgrim's Eye, except for with an additional toughness and without flying. It's your classic, Borderland Rager Civic Wayfinder effect. And it's mana fixing in limited, and it's at common, and it gets all your historic triggers super cheaply. It lets you splash your 3rd color. I love this card so much. I think it's amazing. It's also adorable, like a cross between a spider and a spyglass, but friendlier. I have a copy of it in I have an Itali, the Primal Storm deck that is mostly a treasure red deck that now has a lot of historic stuff going on and looks to get Godpharaoh's Gift online. And Skittering Surveyor is exactly the kind of card that I want in that, and I think that this card's great.
I lost to this card. I did a friendly sealed event shortly after Dominaria came out, and I lost to this card combined with another card that's higher on my list tonight. But yeah, card's real. Yeah.
I mean, it's just great fixing. It's, Pilgrim's Lazy Eye, as it were.
Right.
But it just goes basically in every deck. I mean, it triggers historic, and it fixes your mana, and in sealed it's absolutely ridiculous. And I did get the 2 Surveyor, 2 Grow from the Ashes, or whatever, the green spell land. I got 2 of those and 2 Surveyors. I just played literally everything good. It was whatever. Yeah. My mana was perfect because this stupid thing is great. It goes in all the decks, and it's fantastic. But Aaron, what is your number 10?
So I have this weird thing that I do with Commander where I can't have more than one Commander with the same color identity. So for example, Hapatra is my Golgari girl, and as long as I have her, I can't have another Golgari deck. And Marchesa is my Mardu girl. And so when I am on the hunt for new Commanders, I always try to find Commanders in colors I haven't already earmarked with other decks. And so we're running out. There's a couple colors that are still wide open, and one of them is mono blue. And I'm not normally a blue player, but this card has made me want to build a mono blue Commander deck. I think there's a lot of neat things you can really do with this card. My number 10 is Tetsuko Umezawa, Fugitive. So Tetsuko is 1 in the blue. She's a legendary creature, human rogue, 1 power, 3 toughness. Creatures you control with power or toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. First off, shout out to MJ Scott, who got to preview this card, and she's basically Tetsuko. Like, she is this character, so shout out to her for introducing us to this card. But, you know, we have a lot of neat things like Thassa's Bident and other cards that trigger when you do damage to something, and this also counts power and toughness. Also, coincidentally, Umezawa's Jit works very well with this character. Wouldn't that be awkward if they clashed? That'd be hella awkward. But there's a lot of things you can do with this card, especially if you're on a budget like me. I tend to prefer more affordable commanders, and I'm looking forward to seeing what I can do with this card. And if anybody's watching, if you've built a Tetsuko list, go ahead and ship it to me, because I would love to see what you got.
This is a great card in Limited because it's one of those cards that makes you look at creatures different ways. You're like, oh, that Pegasus Courser is also unblockable all of a sudden, and this other one toughness thing is unblockable, which I didn't really think about. So there's a lot of different ways that this card affects the board, and it gets down early, so it kind of gets attacking as soon as possible. But it's weird because you can't really put equipment or enchantments on it, because then all of a sudden it's blockable. So it's, you
can put Jite on it.
Well, you can put things that boost one or the other. So like if you boost, like let's say something's a 3/1. You can give it like 3/0 and it's a 6/1, and that's pretty cool. Even, you know, we talked about Infect a little bit earlier, you know, being able to take some of your crappy little blue Infect creatures. There's just, you know, even the mirrors, the little blighted mirror, let that thing get through. Like it makes you consider creatures that you would normally discredit because of how small they are.
The blue-black tempo deck in Draft is where I first really was interacting with this card, and boy, are rat colonies terrifying once you get a couple of them in play here. I think that this card's great, and you know, 2-mana 1/3s are no joke in this format. There's a bunch of them. They're actually really quite good because there's so many 3-mana 2/3s floating around, and I'm looking forward to your commander deck with. I'm struggling to think of how many ways to take advantage of this card, but Umezawa's Jite is certainly one of them. So.
Wow, well, unless you're in Brawl, then you narrow it. That's it. I mean, cards like Relic Runner, for example, a 2-mana 2/1 that can get unblockable with historic triggers, but like Tetsuko's like, let's do this, just go, and it gets scary. There's a clock there.
Yeah, Relic Runner, Esther Glider is another one that gets I mean, it already has flying, but it's pretty fragile and it's 3 mana. So being, you know, even flying, like you said with the Pegasus, flying creatures being unblockable, that's still an upgrade.
So for my number 10, I wanted to include one of the new card types. And so, you know, spoiler alert, there's another new card type later. But for this one, I know it's weird. But for this one, first of all, it was a new card type with incredible artwork, absolutely amazing. The sagas were crazy good. Like, and they had the story, and I mean, they're told stories, and the way the artists explain them and stuff. Like, we have this incredible rich community that's built around just how sets are made, how the sausage is made is awesome in Magic. And Noah Bradley made this unbelievable, like, you know, glass piece, this color glass piece of History of Benaglio, which, fun fact, when the set was spoiled via the FAQ and certain retailers guessed at the rarity of this card as they pre-sold it, they pre-sold this card as an uncommon. Can you imagine this card at uncommon? I got this thing in Draft and it is bananas, and that was at Mythic. Because History of Benaglio is a 2-white and a generic mana for a enchantment saga. It's a mythic rare. It's not an uncommon. First and second chapters create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance, and chapter 3 knights you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. And there are lots of knights. This thing has already been seen and constructed. It is very, very powerful. I've played it both in limited and constructed, all-star in both, and you know, if this is going to be like the constructed worthy saga, then I'm totally okay with that. And the fact that Fall of the Thran doesn't seem to be doing that much, which I'm kind of okay with because Armageddon. But yeah, 3 mana make some dorks. Let's do it. It's awesome.
Or as I lovingly call it, Fall of the Tran, just #transmafia. So.
Wow. There you go.
The other cool thing about History of Benaglio was it was the first of the sagas that we got to see the animation for on MTG Arena, which is still one of the most popular links up on the MTG subreddit. Just a beautiful like unscrolling of the art. And it is really powerful. This is one of the leftovers from I believe Mark Rosewater was writing about this in Stories from Dominaria, where originally Dominaria was going to be a large block, small block, 2-block thing,
right? And
that knights were going to be a much bigger piece of the second block or the second set of the block, but they ended up only collapsing it down to 1, and so cards like Dub and History of Benaglio that care about knights. There are very few of them, There's also the black-white mythic 4/4 for
Ariel. The girl.
Ariel. Very few cards that actually care about the knight type, but a couple of them made their way through, and History of Benaglio is one of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I talked about this a little bit in the set review, specifically on the white video, about how there's a stained glass theme kind of throughout the set, and you tend to see that with the good guys, if you will. And I really appreciate the way that they're portraying good differently, where it'd be really easy for them to be like light, dark, call today, sun, moon, just very, very extremes like that. But they're sort of literally filtering it through this stained glass lens, and you're seeing that in a lot of the white cards and a lot of the good cards, the heroic cards, and that's a really neat take on the side of good, and I really appreciate that. And it's just more fun to look at than just light glare, white sun, whatever.
Oh, there's unbelievably gorgeous cards for Benaglio and the Knights of Benaglio and all that stuff. We're moving to number 9. Aaron, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is higher on someone else's list.
Well, poop. Ruben, what's your number 9?
My number Nargle is a card that...
Is a Cargle?
Here we go. It's a Cargle that we hadn't really seen before. It's launched many memes. It's somehow, some way, with all these beloved characters coming back, all these interesting cards that came out in this set, all these new and exciting sagas. Somehow, beyond all Argles,
Arguments.
what I'm trying to say is that number 9 is Yar Goal, Glutton of Urborg.
Yeah.
So Yar Goal is a 4 colorless and a black legendary creature, frog spirit, that has power of 9 and a toughness of 3. And that is the extent of what Yar Goal does.
But he looks
it's amazing. It's this set's Fabolthup of Totally Lost fame. It's other cards have, the Spore Frog, for example, took off in its life as a meme card. Actually, frogs tend to get the love like that. Chubtoad is another one that people are like, ooh, I really enjoy that. That was in my top 10 spellbook cards, for example.
Sure.
But yeah, Yar Goal beyond that, turns out is just a good card to put in your deck. It's a huge threat that you have to answer almost immediately. Putting any sort of evasion on it is spectacular, and it lets you cast your legendary sorceries. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Well, I mean, and right now, in the draft deck I'm playing right now in Magic Online, I have Pegasus Courser and Yar Goal in the same
There you
deck.
go.
And they are BFFs
The
forever.
visual is great.
The flyer.
Get on, Frog Spirit. Let's do this.
Yep. That sounds like best friends.
I mean,
that's 10 damage coming in. That's a 2-turn clock.
I'm telling you, I've mentioned it before. Pegasus Courser is like my literal MVP of Limited. It blocks all the 2/2s. It kills all the 1/1 tokens. Your best creature gets flying. It's absolutely amazing. Yar Goal is included in that, like, you put those things together, the chocolate and the peanut butter, because this thing hits like a freight train. Like it's basically an abyss until they get a 3-power thing, and then you play your trick, and they're sad, and then it continues to be the abyss until they lose. Yar Goal is very good. It's interesting that the Bells and Locks Lieutenant Yar Cool becomes Yar Goal. I don't know why.
Well,
I'm not really sure.
It's tougher to pronounce your K's when you don't have a hard upper palate anymore as a frog. So maybe that's the Smeagol Gollum transformation.
That could be.
And its mouth opens weird. It's a weird.
Yeah,
it's a weird mouth.
It does. It opens.
So does Rubens, and we still love him.
Right. We don't.
How dare you?
That stuff.
Unbelievable.
His
Some
work
people's
environment.
children, I'll tell you what.
Y'all, jeez. Well, it's
is that what you pronounce it in the South? Yalger, Yalgirl, Yargle, the Yal.
Yar Goal, come back now. You hear?
Yar.
Yargle, come back now. I love it.
Can I get Yar Goal anything to drink?
She's not a Yar Goal, not yet a woman. You're welcome.
Wow.
How dare you bring Brittany into this?
That's right. Drug her right into the middle of the
That's
argument.
right. I'm Brittany Bargle.
Well, it's time to get a little funky. And again, this is just one of those that, like, It's so cool. There's so many awesome like random uncommons, not just being legendary and the power levels high, but like there's really really cool uncommons that are super great and constructed and limited, and it's in the perfect tribe for it to be, and it's the perfect mana cost for it, and it has flash. And Merfolk Trickster is so cool. This card is bananas and limited, and it seems to be getting there and constructed. We're not really sure yet, but
I saw someone streaming with it this morning. Not even in a Merfolk deck, like it was just by itself, just doing its thing.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, even and doing weird things like doing the I'll target my Death Shadow, which is now a 13/13 because it doesn't have a drawback. Like it does really weird cool things on both sides. It taps the creature, removes the ability for the rest of the turn. Merfolk Trickster is a 2-blue 2/2 uncommon Merfolk wizard. It has flash, and when it enters the battlefield, you tap target creature an opponent controls. It loses all abilities until end of turn. So this is good on the active on the offense. It's good on the defense. It's good to shut off stupid abilities during the turn. It's good to make your opponent make decisions and whatnot. There's just a lot of gameplay packed in this little tiny 2-mana 2/2, and it's a Merfolk, and that's awesome.
And it taps the creature. I didn't realize that. I thought it just lost all the ability. I was just planning on playing it in middle of combat and getting rid of trample and random other garbage and pump spells and stuff. But turns out it also can tap things down and make things lose indestructible. And boy, this thing is it's a powerhouse. 2/2 flash in blue is already above the curve, let alone with something this powerful.
Yeah, the super cool ability that affects older formats because they do all sorts of crazy stuff, which is awesome. Move on here to number 8. I'll go ahead and kick off number 8 because number 8 finishes my promise of the different card type, which was, we had History of Benaglio, we had the Sagas. Well, one of the other big things that this set had was legendary sorceries because they were important. You needed to have planeswalkers or creatures. You needed to have the things so you could play the stuff that would impact huge, because to the new player, they're just really cool monster effects, but to the old player, like, oh my god, like these are huge moments that you have essentially been living through thematically for years and years, sometimes decades because I'm an old man. But for this one, to have this incredible image and a body laying there with no head, and a head in the hand, and centuries ago a mad god offered a simple trade for this guy's love. He'd trade a head for it, and that's okay because Yawgmoth's Vile Offering is awesome. It's a black and 4 generic mana for a rare legendary sorcery. You may cast it only if you control a legendary creature or planeswalker. You put up to 1 target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. Exile Yawgmoth's Vile Offering. So while I don't think, at least currently, it's not looking like it's going to be some standard all-star, like, I love the effect. I think it's cool. I think it's thematic. I think it's powerful. It's ridiculous and limited if you make it happen. And I have made legendary sorceries happen limited. It's a little tough, but when you get like 5, like 5's kind of the threshold. You get 5 legendary creatures, like you're good. You can count on that stuff. But this one in particular, the image, the way it evokes, the fact we get to see Yawgmoth, the whole thing with Hannah and Gerard, and it comes together and it's awesome.
Yeah, my friend Nick was playing this in his Commander deck. We played a game of Commander on our Patreon stream the other day, and the card did work in EDH. I think the thing that stands out to me the most about this card is how the mummified Hannah corpse, which may or may not actually be her, is really just this glimmer of light. Like the scene is very, very dark, almost so dark that you can't make out what's happening, but you just see this tiny glimmer of white, and it does so much for that image, and that's what really stands out to me about that piece.
So cool. Just like, sort of that newborn, kind of.
Yeah, and even just the brightness of it. It's just so... It'd be very easy to, like, also wrap her in, like, fog or murk or muck or something, but just that bing, it sets it all off.
So it's very rare that we get a chance to reanimate planeswalkers ever. And there's actually 2 in this set. There's also the primeval black-white legendary sorcery, the multicolored legendary sorcery in this set, but it's very few and far between do we have the opportunities to reanimate planeswalkers, and I don't think we've ever gotten the chance to get back.
Obsidat's Aid, that one?
Obsidat's Aid is the one from Return to Ravnica, and then there's Primeval Reborn or something in this set.
Right, the black-white spell.
But there's no way to get opponents' planeswalkers except for this, which is kind of interesting, being able to snag planeswalkers from your opponent's graveyard, so that's pretty sweet.
So, Aaron, you didn't have a number 9, but do you have a number 8?
I do. Everybody tagged me in this card. And it was like, Aaron, is this good dredge? It says graveyards. You like graveyards? Can I use this? And I was like, It's cute, and I'm thinking about it. This card doesn't appear to have found a home yet. It might have a home in my new EDH deck, which we'll certainly talk about a little later. But I really do appreciate this card simply for the flavor of it and the fact that it's a returning character that people seem to have a lot of appreciation for. My number 8 is Multani Yavamaya's Avatar. So Multani is a 6/0/0, 4 colorless and 2 green legendary creature elemental avatar with reach and trample. Multani Yavamaya's Avatar gets +1/+1 for each land you control and each land card in your graveyard. You can pay 1 and a green and return 2 lands you control to their owner's hand. Return Multani from your graveyard to your hand. I love the flavor of this. You know, we've seen Multani before. He made his first appearance in Urza's Legacy, and he also cost 6 stun, and he also had kind of the asterisk power and toughness. But it was based on the number of lands that you had, total number of cards in all players' hands, sorry about that. And then also had the Shroud, meaning he couldn't be the target of spells or abilities. I love that this one really leans on the rebirth aspect of Multani, because if I understand it correctly, he did sort of die, or like
he's one of those like he can't die because he's like a plant. So
right. But I love that this really emphasizes that, where it's like, you know, not only does he have reach and trample, but you get to sort of get that flavor of, even if you get rid of him, if you return 2 lands to your hand, which is essentially him growing in things. Like, I'm under the impression he can like grow in trees or become trees. And so this just drips with flavor, and this really does the character justice. And I love a creature that can't die, obviously. And so I'm definitely open to playing with this creature, but what really makes me so happy about this is that they really did this card justice in terms of his flavor and what the character's really like.
Yeah, the card itself is really sweet. This card is very, very scary and limited. My opponent was like, well, Tony, and I'm like, I have fear. And they're like, Black Blade Reforged. And I was like, for real?
Wow.
Seriously?
That's a thing.
That is synergy, my friends.
Yeah, that was a straight beat.
The fact that this card has reach is actually a huge deal. First of all, because he is a tree, so obviously he should have reach. But second of all, it you know, a lot of those tempo decks rely on flyers, and being able to get down a big reach creature is a huge deal. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Multani, and it's also just an unreasonable threat to have to deal with in any sort of limited game. And even in constructed, he's going to be a little bit difficult to deal with. So
I mean, we'll see if a ramp deck wants to run him. I mean, it's hard to kill monster.
I mean, Llanowar Elves is in the format.
Sure.
This is true. So, Ruben, what's your number 8?
Well, there are also a number of ways to get a lot of lands in play in Standard, and this one in particular I'm choosing because I'm going to lose so many tickets to trying to draft an archetype centered around Grow from the Ashes. Evan alluded to it earlier when I was talking about Spider Friend, but Grow from the Ashes, boy, do I foresee myself going 1-2 in a lot of drafts, trying to get 5-color randomness to happen. So it's a 2 colors and a green sorcery, common. It has kicker of 2. Search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield and shuffle your library. If it was kicked, instead search for 2 land cards. Basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library.
Those come into play untapped, by the way.
Those come into play untapped, which is a huge deal. So Grow from the Ashes and Teferi are both 5 mana that let you have 2 untapped mana at the end of the turn to have things like Seal Away or Remove Soul or Syncopate up. So I'm hoping there's some sort of banned control deck that does that. It's also pretty insane with Tatyova, which is the 3 colorless blue-green legend that we might talk about later, but this helps you get to her, or helps you draw 2 cards and gain 2 life later off of your ramp spell that's usually dead. I was able to live the dream in a draft with getting a turn 2 Elfame Druid, which is an 0/2 for 2 that taps for green, or green if you spend it on a kicked spell. And so I was able to kick a Grow from the Ashes on turn 3 one time, which led to, I think, a turn 6 Slin Voda. Kicked Slin Voda.
Oh, come on.
The real Slin Shady. And that felt super good. So I definitely foresee myself, you know, I've been a big fan of Gift of Paradise in the past. I've been a big fan of New Horizons in the past. This is the next in a great line of kind of mediocre green 3 mana ramp cards that I'm gonna force to draft every single time.
Yeah, when I built so Evan was there when I did my sealed event. He was there when I opened my pool on Magic Online, and I was initially going in one of two directions. I was going in either white black or white red, and I wasn't having a lot of luck with the white black. And so after I finished the first 3 rounds, my friend Kendra had took a look at my deck, and she was like, "Why don't you go white green?" And part of the reason was because I had that elf, and I had 2 of those, and she was like, "You could do like a sapperling thing," and it worked, and I started winning. And so here was this color I hadn't even considered before, and part of the reason why it did so well is because I had 2 copies of that card. And because it is more of a slower format, I was really able to ramp into bigger things, which meant that I always had mana for my Exiling Light card, that white card. I had mana for my On Sarah's Wings. And so, yeah, that card really made the difference, and I never would have guessed it would have been so important.
Grow from the Ashes, again, I mean, I had that ridiculous double Surveyor, double Ashes, and I had the Llanowar, I had the Elf that was a 3/2 that you can pay a green and a generic mana to make any color mana you want.
Yeah,
I had everything. It was beautiful. I just a black spell here and a red spell here, 2 blue spells, because who cares? It was beautiful. It was beautiful. So we're moving on here to number 7. I don't have one because it's higher on somebody's list, and I will not be surprised if it's even near the top of their list, depending on how they look at it. That said, Ruben, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is also my only hire.
Oh, wow.
How did you do that? How did you do that? We do that every week. We do something weird like that every week.
Yeah. Weird samesies, weird hires. Strange.
It's crazy.
What's your number 7?
So my number 7 does not have a home yet, and it might not have a home, but I have a hunch, and that hunch is very powerful. And I'm convinced there's something here, but I'm not a brewer, so I need the Saffrons, I need the Aliantrazis, I need the Hooglins to do something with this card, because I'm convinced there's something you can do with it. My number 7 is Precognition Field. So Precognition Field is 3 and a blue. It's an enchantment. It says you may look at the top card of your library. You can do this at any time. You may cast the top card of your library if it's an instant or sorcery card, or you can pay 3 colorless and exile the top card of your library. There's got to be something here, especially when I think about Legacy with the Miracles deck, wanting to be able to manipulate the top card of your library. Certainly you have your Brainstorms, your Ponders, and things of that nature, but having just sort of an enchantment where if you're already playing the role of kind of a control deck where you're just going to have mana up anyways, if the opponent doesn't do anything, sink it into this, and always make sure that what you have on top is what you want on top. And so there's got to be something here. I don't know where it is, but when I look at this card, I just see so much potential, and I love the art too. The art is really creepy in a way, and I just hope someone can do something with this, because there's got to be something here.
This looks to me like they don't want this to be good. Does that make sense? They don't. Like, development was like, if this is 2 mana or 3 mana, this thing could be like a big chunk of what you're playing against all the time, is them looking at stuff and exiling stuff because they get it out on turn 2 with Llanowar Elf or something, and you're like, we'll make it 4 mana and it'll be fine. It'll be weird and quirky, and this is a card I don't want to be good. Does that make sense? Like, I don't want to see what they're doing with this card.
I
because
agree
Miracles
with that.
is enough. I just like,
Yeah, if Precognition Field is good in Standard, something went horrendously wrong. I definitely like this card a lot, and it evokes really good flavor, and I enjoy it, and I think that there is the possibility of it being something good, because anything that scries or has the ability to fix your draws later in the game always has potential, and this is a permanent effect, the permanent ability to get past those land pockets and dig into your late game stuff. But four is a lot, and so is 3, and that's a lot to pay to dig a card deeper. So we'll see. It is very cool. I definitely like it a lot.
Well, moving on here to number 6, I have a card that I think is also very cool. It's cool because it's kind of a joke, and it's a joke because essentially this character was cursed because it can never die. Because Squee is immortal.
Yeah.
Squee the Immortal is my number 6, because the guy, first of all, it's great to have sort of the comedic character that doesn't go like full Jar Jar,
Yeah.
It's like still funny, still cute, still cool, but also still very powerful. This card's already been seen in Food Chain Goblins or whatever. This card is really good and limited, I swear to God, because it just never goes away. And if you don't have something like my friend Pegasus Courser, you can't stop Squee. God, just keep attacking. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you killed him. Oh, great, he's back. Go ahead. And you're like, oh, you seal away him. Oh, I can still play him when you seal away him. He's annoying, but that's what
Yeah.
he does.
Our friend Allie Medwin, this was her card. This was a card that she played a really big part in designing, and I have certainly cast squee goblin nabobs back in my day. I have no shame in that, and this card does a fine job of sort of keeping up the squee line.
I also like that there is an infinite combo with squee and standard. It's not good, but
like the 4 or 5 cards have to do the thing, and the stars align.
You need to have a paradox engine in play.
Oh, here we go.
Which is already a lot. Then you either need to have a Gilded Lotus, our preview card, or a fully built-up Pyramid of the Pantheon.
I saw Andrew Cuneo playing a Paradox Engine deck just the other day.
Okay.
Of course you did.
With the Power Stones.
Sure.
And Gilded Lotus.
Yeah.
And essentially, there's that 4-mana card that you have to put like brick counters on it, but once you get to like the 3, you tap it, you exile a card.
Oracle Vault.
Oracle's Vault. Yeah,
sure.
Oracle's Vault.
That could go in this deck also.
And it went infinite. He would just keep exiling cards. Whenever he played it, Paradox Engine would untap all the stones and all of his Gilded Lotus. And
I was hoping you were going to say Etherflux Reservoir. I was like, please.
Yeah, probably.
He had to kill somebody from like 28 life, and he had like 12 minutes left to go. Yep. And he was just like clicking and clicking and clicking, and like he just made it like with like 12 seconds left. It was amazing.
Well, the combo with squee is that you just have 2 squees, and they legend rule themselves. Mm-hmm. So when you cast one from your graveyard, your Gilded Lotus will always untap with your Paradox Engine. Mm-hmm. So now all you need is a thing that says tap, deal a damage. And Wall of the Forgotten Pharaohs is the one that I saw that people were using as the hilarious infinite combo. But it exists, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, and standard. That's awesome. Ruben, what's your number 6?
My number 6, I think, is the most busted rare or mythic that you can open in limited. It's close. It's the one that I would. It's because it's an artifact. It's the one I would want to open the most often. Because once you get a Helm of the Host going, the train never stops. It's crazy. So Helm of the Host is a 4-mana legendary artifact equipment. It's a rare from Dominaria. It equips for 5 and has this following ability. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that is a copy of equipped creature, except the token isn't legendary if equipped creature is legendary. That token gains haste.
And importantly, you don't have to sacrifice it or exile it at the end of turn. That is huge.
My God,
so every time you read this card, the longer you play Magic, the more things you realize this card doesn't say. It doesn't exile the thing like Geist of St. Traft. You don't have to attack with the creature to make the token. The token doesn't have to attack. All you have to do is pay the 4-mana investment and then the 5 mana to equip, and then you just get a factory. You just get a Bitter Blossom that makes the best thing on your battlefield every turn.
Yeah, this was my number 9. And I lost to those skitterers, your little 3-mana go search for land. Oh yeah, they put that on the host. And so not only are they filtering their deck by getting all of their lands, they're just making a bunch of 1/3s. And yeah, I lost to show you the power level of that card. You can put it on a 3-mana ramp thing and still die.
This card is bananas. I mean, like, absolutely ridiculous. If they untap and they equip, and like, my opponent, they just equipped a Llanowar Elf. 7 turns later, I'm dead to Llanowar Elves because that's how it works. This card is gorgeous.
I got a copy I'm throwing into my Atali Brawl deck. Can't wait to be attacking with multiple Atalis. That's going to be my fetish.
The art is beautiful. It's also a callback to Vesuva, the mystical, island that is kind of whatever you want it to be kind of thing. And it's a beautiful card and just so powerful. It's got to be one of the best cards in the set. I mean,
it's almost hard to think of a general for Commander that this doesn't work well with.
Yeah.
I mean, Sliver Legion is popular. Perforos is a good mono red one. A lot of folks play that Xenagos God of the Revels deck. That thing being able to pump themselves is hilarious. Right. There are so many good things to put this on, let alone stuff like Aurelia the War Leader or Combat Celebrant that just go infinite with it.
I mean, it's already a $4 card, and this is just a rare. Rares are usually not that expensive.
And here's my attempt at being a finance guy. Here's my Jason Alt impression. I don't think that Mox Amber is going to maintain its price tag, and I think that the artifacts in the set, some of them are going to have to come up with that value, and I think that that's probably Helm of the Host and a couple of other folks. But Helm of the Host is a good long-term investment.
It's a hell of an investment, as it were, but in terms of mana, Because you got to give 9
Well,
mana
that
before it
too.
does anything. But
A
wow.
helm of an investment.
It costs a lot, but some things that cost a lot are worth that much, and I think Helm of the Host is worth that much.
You get what you pay
I'm with
for.
that.
Also, Aaron, number 6.
I might need to turn my volume down a little bit for this one because I'm about to squeal. I'm about to get my squeal on. Here. Look at the baby! There's a baby! There's a baby! I'm my number 6. My number 6 is Marwan the Nurturer. Look at the baby! He's got little ears. I can't. It's like a little melon baby. I can't. And there's a card too. There's a card attached to the baby.
There's also a card.
There's also a card. So Marwan the Nurturer is 2 and a green. She's a legendary creature, elf druid, 1/1. Whenever another elf enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Marwan the Nurturer. You can tap her to add an amount of green mana equal to Marwan's power. Shout out to whoever sent us a mock-up of, I guess they had like a 12/12 Marwan, and so they cut and pasted the babies like on her head, on her arm, on her waist, and I was living for that. Like, I love the baby. My friend Chris built a Marwan deck in EDH and just steamrolled everybody with this deck and this card. I love the story behind Marwan, that she's basically the midwife of these elves, and just sort of redefining what it means to be a woman and be a mother and be a midwife and be powerful. We kind of saw this with Den Protector, baby on her hip, swinging an axe. That's kind of how it should be. And so, typically when we think of babies or parents, they're stuck away from battle, and she's sitting there with the bow or whatever, and she's like, stop, like, I'll bring this kid with me. Yeah, I'll come find you. Not even holding her back. And the story of how, she negotiated something, in the middle of a delivery, like, she's just badass. Just look at the baby.
It's a baby on Magic card. You don't get a baby on a Magic card.
Baby. Love the baby.
How many babies are there on Magic cards? That's a good question.
But just it's like a little melon.
Well, there is
few.
Child of Alara, which is the disco baby.
That's the big baby.
That's
a big baby.
That's like 2001,
Right.
baby in the
I like that Marwan turns Giant Growth into Dark Ritual because it's power, not just number of +1/+1 counters. So yeah, there's some really interesting things that you can do with Marwan of increasing her power artificially to be like Llanowar Elf turn 1, Marwan turn 2. Turn 3, play a Steel Leaf Champion, and then pump the Marwan and play another Steel Leaf Champion or something ridiculous like that.
Sure.
My friend had that artifact. It's an untap thing, like you umbral something, or
Umbral Mantle.
Right, where they're like, woo,
Yeah.
it got out of hand.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I never turn over baby. That's why it's there. It's because it has baby on it. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. All right. So number 5 for me. We had briefly mentioned it earlier. While Helm of the Host is certainly one of the best limited cards in the set, if not the best limited card, that card is nuts. However, I do know the one that I am always excited to open because particularly like pick one, pack one, because it tells you where you want to go.
Yeah.
And that would be Aerial Knight of Windgrace. This card is bananas.
Yes.
Ho, 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 ho.
Yeah.
It is black, white, 2 generic mana for a 4/4 rare legendary human knight with vigilance. It has a white and 2 generic mana tap, create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. Black, tap X untap knights you control, destroy target creature with power X or less. And I have absolutely ran the gamut of like racing my opponent to get enough knights to kill whatever thing in the sky that I can't take care of because, oh my god, they kicked their Academy Drake or whatever, and now I've got to get 4 knights somehow, and hoping I'm drawing my cavalry or whatever, spell to make 2 of them, because you can kind of get into that point where it's like, well, I don't want to use the ability quite yet because I think they have Steal Away, which is the thing. There's a lot of play around this card. Obviously, left unchecked, this card is ridiculous and unstoppable.
You need to kill her on sight.
Yeah. She draws a removal spell, and just a great, like, flavorful, cool, badass female warrior, which is sweet. And just it really ties all the knights together, which is cool. Like if they had 2 sets of Dominaria, this feels like it would be like one of the rares or the mythics perhaps in that second set to really showcase how awesome the knights are.
Yeah, I think it's another neat way to sort of do knights too. We've kind of talked throughout the show about different ways of doing things we've seen before, and sort of this, it's a perfect mix of what the Black Knights and the White Knights do. Of, well, knights have vigilance and they're good, but you mentioned sort of the the inevitability that knights don't often really have. You know, you tend to think of them as like 2/2s and 2/1s, and that's cute. But no, this card can race you. You know, when you think of knights, you don't really think of removal per se, but this is a knight that can remove things. And so this card does a lot of things that's very powerful, but also makes you rethink what knights do. And I really appreciate that when we're doing callbacks, you know, instead of just doing things the same old way.
Right. I mean, the fact that you get it coming and going, and wow, the vigilance is just everything.
She's riding the kid.
Riding the kid. That super fast panther.
Now, yeah, to be fair, Lord Windgrace of Planeswalker from way back in time fame was himself a panther person.
Yeah.
And so being a knight of Windgrace, obviously this person is not a descendant of said Lord
of the Panther people.
But riding the giant Black Panther steed, I think is pretty badass. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Wow. Ruben, what's your number 5?
My number 5, I think, has a chance to break through in Constructed. It is, to my mind, the sleeper enchantment saga of the set, because I don't think that people are really understanding quite how powerful Damnation with Suspend 1 is. And so my number 5 is Phyrexian Scriptures. So Phyrexian Scriptures is 2 colorless black enchantment saga. This is a mythic. On chapter 1, you put a +1/+1 counter on one target creature. That creature becomes an artifact in addition to its other types. Chapter 2, destroy all non-artifact creatures. Chapter 3, exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. Most of the sagas, you're either paying for an effect up front, like Fall of the Thran, and then have some stuff behind it, or you're paying for a payoff in the 3rd chapter, like the Antiquities War, for example. This is the only one I can really think of where the payoff is in chapter 2. And it's really interesting. So Phyrexian Scriptures, you can just play it and say, no, I don't think I'll put a counter on your creature, and pass. And it's sort of like a Doomsayer in that way, for those of you that play Hearthstone. You just sort of got that delay, wrath, and so not only do you kill what's in play, but you kill whatever your opponents would be playing their next turn. And so you get to untap with an empty board. And so you get to be the first one onto the board after Phyrexian Scriptures Chapter 2 happens. Chapter 3 is just there so that Aaron gets upset, I think. I mean, that's not really necessary. But, you know, I think that if me removing your graveyard for 4 mana and waiting for 3 turns, I think that you're going to have to be okay with me doing that. But yeah, I think that, you know, Black gets a turn 5 Wrath if they cast Phyrexian Scriptures on turn 4, and that is no joke.
Yeah, this was our first taste of the sagas, and I was not a fan of the sagas when they were first released, but now I've really come to love them. I actually have a couple of them in my EDH decks, and yeah, this was the one that really started it all. The art is fantastic, sort of that grisly, you know, the blood flowing and kind of filling up sigils as it does, and there were some people even on Reddit who I believe had translated or tried to translate the writing on the tablet or the altar or whatever that is, and so yeah, there's a lot packed into this card.
And who knew that it was like always drink your Ovaltine right there in Phyrexian. It's weird.
There's also somebody trying to combo this with Solemnity. So you play this, and then next turn you play Wrath, and then you play Solemnity, and then you just Wrath every turn because you can't get new counters, which I think is hilarious.
Hey, I respect the petty, so
that's awesome. I mean, Phyrexian Scriptures itself, like, it's one of those cards that, like, it's powerful enough, and you know it is. Maybe it's just not the right environment. You know, there was I previewed Desecration Demon from RTR, and that card sucked when I first got it because Lingering Souls existed, and once Lingering Souls got out, that card was insane. So, like, you know, maybe something needs to leave from Kaladesh to really make this thing.
Or we need to get something.
Or we need to get something.
Another card can come in.
Absolutely. So, we want to hear, Aaron, what is your number 5?
There's nothing more I love than sticking it to a red deck. Sorry, Ruben. You might notice I still haven't hung up the mountain on my wall, and any opportunity I
have... Really? I hadn't noticed.
any opportunity I have to pull a fast one on a red player, I am happy to play that card or to consider it in my sideboard. And when I saw this card, I couldn't help but guffaw at the possibilities. My number 5 is Healing Grace. So Healing Grace is 1 white. It's an instant. Prevent the next 3 damage that would be dealt to any target this turn by a source of your choice, and also you gain 3 life. This is an amped up version of Healing Salve, which was one of the original cycle of like Dark Ritual, Ancestral Recall, Lightning Bolt. This was sort of the white version, and this was widely seen as the worst of them. And so it's interesting that it would come back in Dominaria better. And this is great. This is something I would love to see in modern sideboards, for example. Modern Burn is very popular. Obviously, Skullcrack is a thing, but this is 1 white. Like, this is like a 2-for-1, basically. They swing in with a Monastery Mentor, and then they try to do anything else. It's like, boop, boop. Like, this could be a huge setback. And so I love this card. I love what it represents. The flavor text is great of whatever faith you have in Sarah. She has more in you. Art is gorgeous, and I hope that this sees play somewhere, because I would totally play this.
You got to be real careful, because I had an opponent, God bless him, on Magic Online. This says dealt 3 damage that would be dealt to any target this turn. You prevent that damage because it's not by this target in this turn, because they targeted my creature, and I was like, thanks, buddy.
Right.
And I was like, you gained 3 life, yourself. You got me, but I killed your guy, and it was
wow.
That was
That's a little rough. That's like trying to click on the wrong things for Harm's Way. I mean, this one is a little bit more. This one's a little bit more of reading the card explains the card than Harm's Way is,
right.
Or Mutiny for that matter.
Okay.
But yeah, this card is again. We talked about this in the set review show. This card's no joke in Modern. I think the Snapcaster Mage decks are going to adopt this over Core Firewalker. I think that this card could theoretically see play in a Lich's Mastery style deck if that thing pops up. Because it's just such a cheap effect to gain life, and so you can draw cards very easily with your Lich's Mastery that way, and stay alive, and not have to sacrifice permanents. So I respect the mindset behind the card, less so your reasoning for choosing it, Aaron. But you know what? It's okay. We'll get that mountain on the wall someday.
Well. So it's great that we can kind of have this awesome segue that your number 3 has flavor text that is said by my number 4, or your number 5 rather, is said by my number 4, because Lyra Dawnbringer, that's a heck of a Magic card. That's a whole lot of Magic going on there. Lyra Dawnbringer is 2 white and 3 generic mana for a 5/5 mythic legendary angel. It has flying, first strike, and lifelink, and other angels you control get +1/+1 and have lifelink, because that was necessary. But ultimately, if it's just a Baneslayer and it's Baneslaying and it's awesome, even if it's legendary, and sometimes that matters where you can't have 2 outs, so you can't attack and block the way you want to, which you could sometimes with Baneslayer. It doesn't matter. This card is already like, what, $20-25? It's like going way, way higher. Easily a constructed staple at this point, just like Baneslayer was. Like it was weird. Even back then, they were like, well, it's just a 5-mana derp, that's Doomblade derp. It's like, no, man, that card is bananas. You don't have it, and then you die? That's how that works? And Lyra herself is crazy, but it's really cool to me that even if I see this in limited, it's awesome. The limited format is amazing because I know that I'm not just dead. Like there's a ton of ways for commons to kill this mythic awesome creature. Even the 1 mana artifact, you sacrifice to get -5/-5. That alone.
Yeah, I was thinking of Universal Solvent from Ether Revolt, but the Blood Tallow Candle's the one you were thinking of, which is cheap.
Yeah, Lyra has Lyra, and Lyra is one of the 2 cards that is bringing blue-white control back to standard. The decks are getting rid of Approach, and this is their win condition. This and a Planeswalker. She's seen in the main deck. She's seen in the sideboard. This is a nightmare for red decks to deal with, and aggressive decks, which are in the format. And so, yeah, this card is fantastic, and I'm not surprised to see that it's doing well.
So there was recently a discussion about, specifically Ravenous Chupacabra, about wanting there to be fewer Necatrolls and more Baneslayers. It's important to keep in mind. Well, first of all, this just is Baneslayer. This is 5/5 for 5 with flying, first strike, lifelink. It doesn't have protection from demons and dragons, but then again, that's how relevant's that ever going to be? And when original Baneslayer Angel was in Standard, both Path to Exile and Doomblade were legal, and it was still Baneslayer Angel. That was still a card. The fact that the best way to get rid of Lyra Dawnbringer is, like, Seal Away, I guess. But you can get rid of a Seal Away. Cast Down can't touch this. This thing's pretty great. It's not bad.
But even in limited, there's that green spell that deals 7 damage to a flyer.
Yep.
There's
Pierce the Sky. There's Eviscerate.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of There's Fight with Fire and Fiery. The red destroy an artifact or deal 5.
Vicious Offering, which is sack a creature, creature to killer.
Right. I mean, there are ways to deal with it, and I love that. I love that Common has ways to deal with all these crazy mythics, and that's something that makes the limited environment even better. Is that even the bombs can be answered, by the proletariat rising up against the bourgeoisie.
The means of production, if you will.
Yeah, they're seizing the means of production. But
Lyra Dawn Bourgeoisie.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow. Well, I love the fact that it's like flying first strike, lifelink, and the price of tea in China. Like, it really doesn't matter what that last line is.
You're gonna feel real dumb when someone plays it with Angel of Invention and it makes a difference.
Hey-o.
Well, the thing is that all the angels cost 5 anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like Baneslayer, Flash, Afacin, Angel of Invention, as you just said. So unless we're playing Shillelagh, Voice of Plenty, as our thing, then I don't think we're gaining a ton of life. Is my point.
I mean, fair. All I'm saying is it's just so silly. It's like protection from dragons and demons or whatever. It's like, sure,
right.
Whatever. Okay.
Yeah, it's relevant every once in a while. Like every
bells
once
and locks
in a while.
the format. It'd be pretty. I can understand why the Pro Demons isn't there, but
I mean, flying first strike, lifelink, and Bob's your uncle. Like, who cares?
This can't get jump blocked by Varix and Terox or Karox.
Sure.
This is able to get chump blocked by a couple of.
Someone should come up with like a lyra generator where it basically just adds like random, text.
Line of
See
text.
what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Robo Lyra. Ruben, what's your number 4?
So my number 4, I think, I talked about at length when we did the preview show, because I think that it might just be the best 1-drop that White's gotten in a very long time. I also said that this was probably, I think that this was directly out of Richard Garfield's, construction paper binder. Like, he just shows up with card ideas fully 100% printed and hands them to people at the office. This is the urban legend I've heard of how Richard Garfield makes cards. Is he physically makes them at his house and brings them in and says, what do you think of this card? And I think that Dauntless Bodyguard was one of those. Dauntless Bodyguard is a 1-mana 2/1 uncommon. It's a creature, human knight. As Dauntless Bodyguard enters the battlefield, choose another creature you control. Sacrifice Dauntless Bodyguard. The chosen creature gains indestructible until end of turn. Really exciting card for the Craig Wesco fans out there for your aggressive white and green-white strategies. Probably has room in modern 5-color humans. And potentially things like modern death and taxes and stuff like that. A 2/1 that can prevent your Thalia is not to be underestimated in either of those formats. Obviously, you can only play so many Mother of Runes in Legacy, and you certainly can't play any Mother of Runes in Modern. So I think that it at least has a little bit of possibility. It's a 2/1 for 1 with upside, with relevant creature types. It's got great art. It's got great flavor text. This is a card that's going to make folks want to play White.
I mean, it's amazing limited. I've played this plenty in draft and sealed at this point. It's absolutely terrific. I mean, this is a good example of one of those really thematic, cool, once you see it as a Magic card, you're like, oh, that makes sense, right? Oh, okay, cool. I mean, that feels like sort of what Richard Garfield's able to do when he comes to a set. You're just like, oh, that makes so much sense. I feel like I'm home. I feel like I'm in a fantasy setting. This is what a knight does, is protect, at all costs, blah, blah, blah. That's really sweet. Aaron.
I want an altar of this with Sinbad from First Kid diving in front of the president. Do you remember that movie? No,
yes,
only me. All right, we'll move on.
And I'm sorry.
If you're talking about an altar and you're not mentioning Whitney Houston, how dare you?
Sure.
How dare you?
If you be my bodyguard. Okay.
Wow. No. You are taking that in the wrong direction, sir.
Is that the wrong Bodyguard song?
That's the wrong one.
The sheer caucasity.
Wow. Aaron, what's your number 4?
My number 4 was the most talked about card in these circles that I run in. Because I'm not really a standard girl, I'm not really a sealed girl, but I love my older formats. And this card has seen a lot of discussion and a lot of testing. I still feel like we haven't quite figured out what to do with it yet, surprisingly enough. The few times that I've seen it in action, it's actually been a little disappointing. And dare I say, it's actually screwed the pilot over more than the opponent. But I still think there's more to be done. It is affectionately known as the Magic Hate Ball. My number 4 is Damping Sphere. So Damping Sphere is 2 colorless. It's an artifact. It says if a land is tapped for 2 or more mana, it produces 1 wingding, 1 colorless instead of any other type and amount. Each spell a player casts costs 1 more to cast for each other spell that player has cast this turn. So a lot of people have been very vocal about the fact they don't like Tron in Modern. This is a nice sort of way to deal with that. Storm, decks that want to cast very cheap spells, a lot of very cheap spells. This is a nice way to deal with that too. Workshops in Vintage, the Post decks, if you play Legacy Cloud Post, those kinds of cards. And this is an uncommon. This is a card that can go in any deck. You know, a lot of the answers to these decks typically are stuck in a color. And if you happen to not be playing that color, too bad. But this is a card that any deck can run, and there's a lot of talk about this. It answers a lot of very unpopular decks, and so I think once people kind of identify whether or not it's right for their deck, the card is going to see a lot of play. It's currently going for about $4 right now for an uncommon. I'm really, and the art is also a callback to Null Rod. You see a Thran relic. It has spent 10,000 years doing absolutely nothing, and I love everything about this card, and I'm anxious to see what people can do with it.
I mean, it's a $4 uncommon. That's ridiculous. Like, even Seal Away that you want a playset of in standard 100% is like a buck, like $1.25 or something. And for this is to me in a long line of Cloud Goat Rangers and Charging Monstrosaurs of this card should be rare, if nothing else, because the card would be worth a lot of money. Like it would literally help the value of the set, because you put this weird card that does 0 in limited, like actual nothing in limited. It also does exactly nothing for 10,000 years in limited, because so why would you have it gunking up your sealed decks and your drafts? This stupid uncommon. I mean, I don't know.
I think that's why it's not a rare, is so that if you open it in your sealed pool, you're not like, oh, I'm so sad.
You're like, now it gained $4 in value, and that's pretty cool.
This could have been a Lyra or whatever.
Sure. I mean, it can definitely bring feel bads, but at the same time, again, before the set even came out, people were pre-ordering this at $10 a pop. They thought it was rare. Again, they guessed the rarity at rare because it sounds like a rare to me. It looks like a rare. But here we are as an uncommon, and that's cool, because you need to hate. Sometimes you need to be like, I hate stupid deck. Here's the hate stupid deck card.
Right, and this is, I hate Tron, I hate Storm. I kind of also hate Living End, but not really. I mean, I guess I kind of hate Living End with Damping Sphere. But yeah, the Luxury Ball is pretty cool. I'm a fan.
It hates a lot of things, you know. It's not just
and the Null Rod callback in the flavor text is the cherry on top.
It is a delight, if you will. We went here to number 3. You know, previously we've been talking about, you know, how blue-white control is coming back, and Lyra was right there, because if my number 4 is Lyra, my number 3 has to be Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. This card is a chef's kiss. It is a perfect, beautiful, awesome Planeswalker. I've got to play this in League play myself, and it's been terrific. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria is a blue, white, and 3 generic mana for a 4 loyalty legendary Planeswalker. It is a mythic, of course. It has +1, draw a card. At the beginning of the next end step, untap 2 lands. Note, you have to untap 2 lands, even if they're not yours. I know that's weird.
Yeah.
-3, put target non-land permanent into its owner's library, 3rd from the top. -8, you get an emblem with, quote, whenever you draw a card, exile target permanent and opponent controls. The beauty of this Planeswalker, it's such a nice scalpel. It does exactly what you want blue-white control to do. You want to have mana up so you can stop things next turn. You play the thing, you get your card advantage, you untap your lands, all right, now I'm ready to deal with stuff, let's make it happen. Now, if you can't deal with things, that's the -3 part. No matter what they have, no matter what non-land thing is kicking your butt, as long as it doesn't have, you know, weird hexproof or protection or whatever, you're just like, I'll deal with that in a couple turns. Just give me a minute, and I'll take care of it. Because you need to draw your removal, you need to draw your wrath, you need to draw your counterspell.
You can also crack a Field of Ruin and shuffle it deeper, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it solves problems. So you get ahead and you get to untap, so you have some shields up with the first ability, and the second one you basically deal with anything that's giving you a problem. And -8 is cool and all, which is fun, but
can target lands.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So in terms of the emblem, the emblem. I mean, once you got the emblem,
that's like a main win condition now for the blue-white control decks. Because things like Settle the Wreckage and Seal Away exist, and your only win conditions are like 3 Torrential Gear Hulks, you have to emblem Teferi and then exile all their white sources so that you can attack them for 4 times.
Oh my god.
Yep, that's going to be constructed standard. See,
currently going for $40. I've heard it's even more on Magic Online, or even just in Arena.
Yikes.
But yeah, card found an immediate home in the blue-white decks. It has been this and lyra are the reason why the blue-white decks are becoming more popular. They're leaning more on the cycling theme as opposed to Approach of the Second Sun. Yeah, card is gross.
I mean, also note that the blue-white control deck won the recent Team Stars of the Games event over the weekend. So, like, the hype is real. The card is very, very good.
And I'm all for it. We really, Control hasn't had as much success in Standard as other decks have. And, we've certainly hypothesized as to what it would take. And I guess all it takes is Baneslayer, Angel, and Teferi. But, yeah, I welcome our new Control Overlords. I think it's great.
I'm glad seeing decks that leave for a while, but then come back. And that's okay. And then next set comes out and blue-white control isn't good anymore because reasons.
Well, sure.
Whatever. Ruben, what's your number 3?
Well, you had a Planeswalker at number 3. I, too, have a Planeswalker at number 3. It is also the subject of the most recent pie bet between Mr. Evan Irwin and myself. Hashtag pie bets. Hashtag never getting pied in the face because we're first of all never actually buying the products for it, and second of all, there's just no way that Jaya Ballard isn't making a splash in Standard. I mean, there's just no way, right? So Jaya Ballard is 2 colorless, red for a legendary Planeswalker Jaya. Enters the battlefield with 5 loyalty counters. +1, add red to your mana pool. Oh, wait. No, you don't. You just add red. Spend this mana only to cast instant or sorcery spells. +1, another +1, by the way. Discard up to 3 cards, then draw that many cards. And -8, you get an emblem with you may cast instant and sorcery cards from your graveyard. If a card cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. I just think that Jaya is great. I think that this card is it's possible to power out some stupid stuff early. The fact that, like Teferi, it gives you access to play it and then play something else after it, or to defend it in some way, shape, or form is super interesting. The other ability to be able to cycle away chaff, get rid of excess lands, or cards that you don't need in a certain matchup, and then draw that many cards is also good. The fact that she +1s for both of those abilities to immediately get up to 6 loyalty is a big deal. And the late game of being able to give all of the spells in your graveyard flashback is also excellent. I think that there is the potential for a big red style control deck. She does exist in a world with Chandra, Torch of Defiance, which is probably the best red Planeswalker we've ever had. And so she'll probably have to coexist in a deck with Chandra in one way, shape, or form. And, of course, the red prison-style decks that want a red Planeswalker in Modern are trying to empty their hand for Ensnaring Bridge. So there's probably not a ton of room for a Jaya there. But I just think that the potential that Jaya has, in addition to the fact that this is one of the best characters lore-wise, flavor-wise, and flavor text-wise, to the point where if you go to Scryfall and want to search by flavor text, it says you may search for any flavor text, for example, Jaya Ballard, in the search bar for flavor text. And so I'm in love with the character, and I'm in love with the card.
So here's the thing. I actually got to play with this card in Limited. I actually got to play in a red, I think it was a red-white deck, or maybe even a red-green deck. I got to play with her.
Yeah.
And not only do I think that the pie into your face is going to be absolutely terrific when it happens, I'm actually going to go down. This is one of the worst Planeswalkers ever made. This card is terrible. This card is terrible. Like, it's actively bad. And here's the number one thing, and I wish I mentioned this during the set review, because I actually regret not saying this. She doesn't protect herself. That's the number one thing a Planeswalker has to do, because when I drew her, and I was like, I have no other cards in hand. I top decked her, so the second ability does nothing. The first ability also does nothing because I have nothing in my hand. And even if it did, I can't play creatures or anything with it. So if I tap it out with it, I can't do that either. Like,
boy, sounds like your limited deck was great. So Jaya Ballard immediately goes up to 6 loyalty. That's how she protects herself. I don't know if you know, but 6 is a high number.
It's so bad. I'm telling you, it is like
disrespect.
Historically bad. This card is.
Agreed. It will trigger your historic spells as well. So you should definitely play every copy that you get.
So Aaron, what is your number 3?
My number 3 is my last hire, and it is on someone else's list.
Oh boy. Well, we'll see what it is real soon now. As we get here to number 2, almost complete. I cannot believe that my number 2 is on neither of y'all's lists. I'm a little shocked, to be honest. I thought I was like, well, this is going to be like the default number 1. I'm going to be the weirdo, and number 2, because for Dominaria, one of the big things obviously come back was all these super cool characters that we know and we love, and it's really interesting and neat. And for new players, there's cool cards that do cool things, and it's Time Spiral without like the weird super in jokey, like you needed to know 7 levels of what this weird blue card did because it was a white card back in the day. No, what you needed to know was that Urza was this dude, and Urza was powerful, and Urza figured out time travel, but the only way he could do that is by making a silver golem. He made a scion of himself, if you will, a Karn scion of Urza. Is a 4 generic mana, 5 loyalty, mythic, legendary planeswalker, has a +1 of reveal the top 2 cards of your library, and opponent chooses one of them and put that card into your hand and exile the other with a silver counter on it. -1, put a card you own with a silver counter on it from exile into your hand, and -2, create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token with, quote, this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control, unquote. And this card is bananas. It's bananas unlimited because it protects itself. It gives you card advantage throughout the game. Note that even if you play another Karn, you can still get back the cards with the silver counters because it doesn't specify this Karn or this creature or this planeswalker or whatever. It doesn't say exiled by Karn or whatever. It's like, no, it's out. It's got a counter. You can get it, and that's great. And it was funny, but over the weekend, Karn was out in play, and they were explaining that, to the commentators were just kind of like, coming to that realization, and they're like, oh my god, like this card needed to do one more thing, which was, extra versions of itself can take advantage of previous versions of itself.
Right. I got to see this card in action at the VSL the other day. My teammate Rachel Agnes had built one of her decks was called What Incarnation, and she was running Damping Sphere and Karn. Damping Sphere ended up being the bigger disappointment. Karn knocked it out of the park. Like when people saw her deck list, they assumed the opposite would be true. They were like, well, Karn's really cute. Oh no, Karn did work. Like, especially against other Shops decks. Shops doesn't really have a great way to get card advantage. Like, they tend to sneeze out their hand, and then they're pretty much in top deck mode. But, like, if you're playing a Karn, that's card advantage, which is something that Workshops is not normally known for. And then just being able to consistently make creatures when everything you have is an artifact, it gets out of hand very, very quickly. And card is very impressive. I expected to see play in at least 2 formats.
It's already playing those formats. I mean, it's seen playing Modern, it's seen playing Legacy, Sibling Standard. I mean, it's a $46 card, and it literally just came out. It's $46.
Yeah.
I mean,
card is great. I mean, in Modern, where in particular that's the format you're going to run into the most Stony Silences as an affinity player, and this just puts 2 probably 5/5s onto the board. It's a win con by itself, even against affinity hate. And so that's pretty awesome. I think it was Conley Woods was streaming an Inspiring Statuary deck that is able to cast Karn with the Inspiring Statuary Improvise, because Karn himself is not an artifact in this particular scenario.
Wow.
Just a super powerful card, really awesome. Also another one that gets up to ludicrous numbers of loyalty super quickly, and yeah, I think that Karn is Karn lives up to the hype, that's for sure.
Like this is the one, like, I think they wanted to be good. You know what I mean? They're like, we want this to be the flagship card of the set, and by God. Whoo.
And it's funny because I remember when it was first revealed, it has big shoes to fill. Karn Liberated is a thing. It's up to almost $100 again now, and so the reaction was mixed at first. They were like, well, it's no Karn Liberated, and so and so I think a lot of people kind of
it's the second best Karn, as I said.
Right, but I think a lot of people kind of had their guard up of, well, it's cute, and now that people are seeing it, the light bulbs are starting to go off.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
by the way,
we'll see. I don't know if the race is over between Karn Liberated and Silent Urza. I think.
You think it's better?
I think that it's in the running. I'm saying that right now. I think it's too.
We don't know yet.
It's too early to call.
Okay.
It took a while for Karn Liberated to do anything in Modern. It took a while for Karn Liberated to do anything anywhere. And so give him some time. The set's been out for like a week. Also, by the way, the flagship card of the set is the Weatherlight. Evan.
Well, I understand
that's
that.
Literally
That's
the flagship.
I get it. And as soon as I said it, I was like, Weatherlight, but whatever. Yeah. For me, it's already being seen. It's seen play in all kinds of decks, whether they're aggro-oriented or control-oriented. It's been seen play in older formats. It's like one of the most expensive cards. The thing I think most about it is it's a very subtle, very clever design because it doesn't just fit in anything. It is 4 generic mana. You could play it in literally any deck you want, but you got to know exactly what you're doing with Karn. Otherwise, it's not good enough sort of by its own. You have to figure out what you're doing around it.
See, I think the opposite is true. I think that, if we're talking about, it competing with Karn Liberated, I think one of the ways that it might really compete with Karn, or possibly even, go past Karn Liberated, is that it can go in different decks. I feel like Karn Liberated is very narrow. Like, unless you're playing something that can make gross amounts of mana, you're not really going to run it. Because Karn only costs, 4? I feel like you can play it in a wider range of decks, which is why it might, really rival him as being a good card.
But it's great to see. It's already successful. It's in a ton of decks. One of the first decks I played in the new format was 4 Teferi, 4 Karn.
And listen, if we're going to talk about Karn, we have to talk about that ridiculous cosplay at GP Bologna this past weekend. A young man who goes by Atlas Crafts. Did you see? He was on stilts. Like, this was it. It didn't even look like, it looked like a construct. Like, it looked like a wax figure. It looked like a robot. There was a man inside of there. Like, he built that thing. Breathtaking cosplay. Go look him up. Channel Fireball was tweeting him all weekend long, as they should be.
And he appeared on coverage for a minute too, which was
changed
hilarious.
The cosplay game. I mean, it was just an amazing cosplay.
Yeah, it was terrific. And the card's amazing, and it's awesome. And again, I was just like, you guys don't have Karn at your top? Okay, that's fine. Ruben, what's number 2?
Well, my number 2 was the card that when we did our set review show, we had the most responses about. And it wasn't for any of the Planeswalkers. It wasn't for any of the Legends. It wasn't for any of the things that did new and exciting stuff. It was for Llanowar Elves. Llanowar Elves is a 1 green mana, 1/1 creature elf druid. Tap, add a green. That's it. That is the end of what that card does. This might be the first Magic card I ever played. Well, I take that back. I probably played a forest first because I had to then tap the forest. This is the first Magic card I cast.
Non-land.
Non-land card that I cast. I think. It might be. I don't recall. I learned Magic when I was 11 or 12, so don't quote me on that. But it's certainly one of the first several. And it's a card that is, to this day, questionable whether it's too good for Standard. I think that the number of copies of Llanowar Elves that are going to be in the Pro Tour, I think that if I saw under 16 Llanowar Elves in the top 8 of the Pro Tour, I'd be tempted to take the over on that. That's how good Llanowar Elves is. It has dominated Standard for more than half of its time in Standard, to the point where they took it away from Standard because it was too good on the scale of things like Lightning Bolt and Dark Ritual. I think that this is going to get deck builders' minds churning in a way that we haven't seen in a while. We had Chris Van Meter and Brian Kibler and Michael Flores come into our set review and say that this was the one card that they were most excited about from Dominaria. And it's tough to argue with that level of pedigree.
It's just it's one of the cards, and they mentioned, I think Rosewater had mentioned that they were weighing whether to bring back Birds of Paradise or Llanowar Elves. That was going to be one of the big cards from Dominaria, and Dominaria having Llanowar, the place Llanowar,
yes.
And the fact that it's very exciting. It brings a lot of the green players back to the game, because not only is the effect unbelievably powerful, they got rid of Llanowar Elves. They replaced it with Elvish Mystic, and it's like, that's not Llanowar Elves. And it was this weird it's plural. That means we can't have a single creature be a plural.
And they
name.
went through that phase where you can't have plurals on a card, and they got way over that.
Right.
With Gissa and Geralf and Firesong and Sunspeaker, and multiple groups of multiple things being on one card, and Llanowar Elves was the last bastion.
Yeah, and I'm really excited. I think part of why they got rid of it was that it's a big design constraint. You really got to be careful with your 3-drops when you can get them out on turn 2 thanks to Llanowar Elves. So that's a thing. But overall, I mean, again, just one more thing for Dominaria to be that much more exciting and impactful and resonant. This whole set is just like, it's a love letter to Magic players. Aaron, what's your number 2?
I love a good win condition story. You know, I don't want to win with a Toolcraft exemplar. You know, that's not a fun story to tell. You know, I love an over the top win condition. You know, you're playing Modern Ad Nauseam, you're drawing your entire deck, going to -56 and throwing all your lands at people. That's awesome. You know, you're playing Vintage Dredge and you're making 40 power worth of zombies and swinging it on turn 2. That is a story worth telling. And I really hope that my number 2 leads to a deck of any stripe so that I can tell my friends that I got to win with the help of Lich's Mastery. So Lich's Mastery is 3 colorless and 3 black. It's a legendary enchantment with hexproof. You can't lose the game. Sounds good. Oh, but wait, there's a catch. Whenever you gain life, draw that many cards. Okay. Still, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Whenever you lose life, for each 1 life you lose, you either have to exile a permanent you control, or a card from your hand or your graveyard. And then if Lich's Mastery leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. And so it basically turns everything you've done and everything you have into this resource, you know, your graveyard, your hand, and your permanents. And we've seen Lich cards in the past. I think there was like Nefarious Lich, and there was the original Lich and things like that. So we've seen this done before. But this has to be, I think, one of the cleanest versions, and maybe just an improvement. Hexproof alone makes it much more difficult to deal with. But, you know, just the ways that you can sort of manipulate this. You know, Ruben talked about Healing Grace and even Approach of the Second Sun, you know, being able to gain 7 and then drawing, you know, a bunch of cards is really great. And Saffron Olive has alluded to the fact that there's video coming. There's video coming, and I'm going to be like a kid on Christmas morning, but I want someone to do something very scary with this card. I would 100% play this. It's so black, just in its flavor, just, you know, playing with death and playing with life. It's just everything I want to be doing, and I just love everything about this card, and I hope there's something I can do with it.
This was one of those, like, you know, came from Richard Garfield's binder, you know,
Yes.
like wrote down like the Lich that he wanted back in the day. The original Lich didn't really do what he wanted. This does exactly what he wants it to do. And if anything, it just really, this is like one of the ultimate Johnny cards, you know. Mm-hmm. Take it, run with it, do something crazy, because when it works, it's going to be so satisfying. And the other times you're going to be like, whatever, let's go to game 3.
I actually opened it in that league that I did, Evan. I had this and Evra, and I felt like you were my dad. I was like, Dad, can we do this? And you were like, no. And I was like, let me do this. And you were like, it's terrible. Don't do it. And I actually just want to build the deck, and I'm going to call it Resting Lich Face. And you're welcome.
Love it.
That's awesome. So we're going to turn the corner here to number 1. Ruben, what is your number 1?
I think that the people would be disappointed if I didn't stay on brand. And that means that my number 1 is a red card. And it's probably the red card that the red mages that I trust are the most excited about. I kind of got my thunder stolen. This was the one I wanted to have the pie bet be about. But once I saw Ephro and P. Sully talk about it in the set review, I was like, probably not getting anything out of Evan. So let's switch over. But I think that this card is very exciting for red, particularly if people are going to be playing a lot of Llanowar Elves and Dauntless bodyguards, and a lot of construct tokens out of Karn and other things that have 1 toughness. Goblin Chain Whirler is going to be a player. That's a real Magic card. Goblin Chain Whirler is red for a 3/3 Goblin Warrior. It has first strike. And when Goblin Chain Whirler enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. Just by itself, that is value that red creatures don't get anymore. We haven't seen a red 3-drop get that kind of, like, lots of things that are all good since probably Boros Reckoner. Maybe Boggart Ramgang. I mean, it's been a while since we've had something that's red 3/3 that does this much. And the fact that that's just it by itself. Oh, by the way, it also combos really well with a bunch of other cards. For example, you can have a Soulscar Mage in Standard. One of your usual 1-drops says that all non-combat damage that you deal counts as -1/-1 counters. Well, guess what? Those whirling chains, that's non-combat damage. So that shrinks all your opponent's boards. That's a big deal. One of the combos that I saw that I tweeted out was with Nightshade Peddler in Modern. that I thought was adorable, which is a soul bond card that when it bonds a soul with another creature, both of those creatures gain death touch.
Oh my god!
And so Goblin Chain Whirler, those chains have death touch when it enters the battlefield.
Yes.
So you've got your Goblin Chain Whirler, Nightshade Peddler, Nightshade Peddler coming in off of your collected company or whatever.
Oh my god!
That would be spectacular. People
Wow.
are already rebuilding the mana base of the mono red deck that used to have a lot of deserts in it. Things like Sunscorched Desert and Scavenger Grounds. There are fewer of those. You're welcome, Aaron. As a result of Goblin Chain Whirler being more reliably cast on turn 3, because when you play a Sunscorched Desert, that's a later Goblin Chain Whirler.
Yeah.
This thing not only does that, but it picks off all of the dinosaur rampers, all of your Drovers of the Mighty and Otepec Huntmasters. It gets rid of things like Champion of Wits. It gets rid of Glint Sleeve Siphoners. There's a ton of stuff that Goblin Chain Whirler deals with. Oh, by the way, it's also a 3/3 first striker, so it combos great later with your burn spells in combat and other Goblin Chain Whirlers to get past 4 toughness creatures. Card is just everything. Card is everything I want in a red card. It is so good.
This is one of the cards. I've seen several streamers, including Jim Davis, play around with a Modern Goblins list that's also running Fecundity.
Yes.
And this is one of the cards that they're trying out. There's been a lot of talk about Modern Goblins possibly being a thing in part because of this card. Our card is gross, and I think it's great. And, it's very Ruben all the way around.
This is the card that I absolutely underestimated, and until I was like, oh my god, P-Cell, and I was like, oh my god, we got 2.
Right, see, I could have gotten a pie.
He doesn't get out of bed for just anything.
What I'm saying.
You could have. I would have underestimated it, and I got pied. But instead, you just let me do the pieing. You let me throw the pie. Thanks, buddy. That's value.
Well, here's what I wanted to happen was I wanted Evan to be on the correct side of a pie bet for once in his life. And so
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Green Call Siren and Gaia.
Can we recall Dig Through Time? Yes, I have like a 6-to-1 ratio, but Dig Through Time.
Okay, all right, sure.
Got that one.
Batting average up to about 200. We're good.
Thanks. Aaron, what's your number 1?
No, Evan, we know what her number 1 is.
I know, it's Muldrotha.
No. Hold on. Yeah, it's Muldrotha. But the audience knew that too.
The audience was like, all right, Aaron, just spit it out.
Yeah, everyone already knew that Aaron's number 1. Sorry.
I have to do my broken things giggle because this card is broken and I love it. My number 1 is Muldrotha the Gravetide. So Muldrotha the Gravetide is 3, a black, a green, and a blue. She's a legendary creature, elemental avatar, 6/6. During each of your turns, you may play up to 1 permanent card of each permanent type from your graveyard. Oh my god! I took her to EDH this past weekend. I literally spent all day Saturday playing nonstop EDH games with her as my commander, and they were gunning for me. I wasn't even going ham. Like, I'm playing a budget, watered-down version of this deck. I'm not running Lotus Petals. I'm not running LEDs. I'm holding back.
Wow.
But the minute I flipped her over, they were like, she gotta go. I was like, I've never felt so attacked in my life. Card is terrifying. She's currently going for $10 a piece right now. A lot of buzz around this card. I love the storyline behind it, that she's essentially Multani's child. If I remember correctly, if I understand it correctly, there was a piece of Urborg that was like transplanted, and I guess she was like in the land somehow, and the flavor text says, my child grew from rotten ruin and yet she bloomed. Me too! Like, oh my god, I just love, we've all been through some things.
Same.
We've bloomed, we've survived. Exactly. And so just this ectoplasm, the art is beautiful. I love everything you can do with this card. And like I said, even when you're not trying to, this card is scary. And I have so much fun playing with this deck. I'm going to be buying a couple more cards to upgrade it. But just one of the most inspiring commanders I've ever played with. There's been talk about using her in Vintage Oath as a way to get back, one of each of your permanents when Oath of Druids goes off. And so I just love everything about this card. And I love it from top to bottom.
Well,
so this goes infinite with Deadeye Navigator and Lion's Eye Diamond, by the way, which lets you cast every card in your graveyard, which is kind of unbelievable. I like that one a lot too. Muldrotha is definitely that one is good. If you flip over Muldrotha in a commander game, it's going to be a problem. I'm hoping that
ridiculous.
Yeah,
it just does everything.
I'm hoping that Brawl gets fixed soon so that we can play stuff like Muldrotha in Brawl, because I bet there's a really fun Brawl Drotha deck. But But yeah, I really like this card quite a bit. This is and the simplicity of the flavor text is just so clean. And it fits with Multani if Multani has a child, it would do this. It makes perfect sense. It's in the perfect Sultai colors. So this is like the graveyard-based Sultai commander that you want. I mean, the Mimeoplasms is fine, and Sultai snake person that I'm forgetting the name of.
Sidisi?
Sidisi is also a good one.
Fern and Sidisi play very well together.
They do.
Oh yeah. Well, look, man. If we're going to talk about love, and I'm just going to note here, Ruben, your number 7 was not Muldrotha, was it?
No.
Because there's only one card that is on every single one of our lists, and there's a reason it's my number 1. Because everyone loves it, and not only did I love the card in terms of like the flavor and the look and the feel and all this other stuff, I love the card because not only does it look cool, sound cool, got a great story, amazing artwork, really flavorful. It's only an uncommon, so I get to see it a lot in limited. It's great in limited. It's great in limited. And there's characters that we're going to hang on to, and there's characters that I am 100% sure we will see again. And Slimefoot the Stowaway is going to be one of them.
My number 3.
It's so good. I love this card.
My number, and it's on all 3 of our lists.
Is the
my number
only
7
card on all 3 because everyone loves Slimefoot. Yar Goal's cool, but everybody loves Slimefoot.
Sure.
It's so neat. Slimefoot the Stowaway is a black-green generic mana for a 2/3 uncommon legendary fungus. When a Saproling you control dies, as he is, whenever a Saproling you control dies, Slimefoot the Stowaway deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. 4 generic mana, create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token. The end. Because this creates an army in and of itself. It holds off big monsters from killing you. It works with things like fungal plots to create sort of a loop where you're able to create tokens, block with those, sacrifice them, gain life, get its trigger, draw some cards, do something. It's fantastic, and I've won games out of nowhere that I have no right winning, thanks to Slimefoot being awesome. It's also a 3-mana 2/3, which is very important limited in this format. Can get through your 2/2s and your 1/1s, and it's just a card that it has to be answered as soon as possible, has a very high power level for limited, but you can't run 2 of them at the same time, of course.
Yeah.
And again, just the resonant of the character. I'm just like, what card do I love the most out of this set? I love this stupid card. I've played with it in limited. It's great. I've drafted decks around it. I've played it in sealed. It's awesome. It's just
and
awesome.
who could have predicted it? There was a Vorthos Mike on Twitter had made a meme. I think it was from Family Guy, where it was like, it's this really corporate presentation of like Dominaria, and the room is sitting in their chairs, and then the corporate person goes Slimefoot, and the room gets up and cheers. And who could have predicted that this would be the card? In a set with Teferi and Llanowar elves and Karn, Slimefoot became a sensation. Who could have? You couldn't make that up. And the story that it was just sort of chilling. That when Joyra brings back the Weatherlight, it's just like a seed or something, and it was like a mold, and it just started growing. And now it's the Swabby. It's the deckhand. What?
It's the spiritual successor to Squee. Even though Squee is in this set, Slimefoot's the spiritual successor.
And just crew the Weatherlight.
And just like Squee, it can't crew the Weatherlight by itself, but with one of its little friends it can.
Yes.
Because it needs the boost up to the steering wheel.
It makes little fungal babies. It makes little babies.
Yes, right. But don't eat the babies.
Don't #eat the baby.
Don't eat the baby.
But the one question I have about Slimefoot that I, as a Dungeons & Dragons person, need answered is that it looks a lot like the Myconids, which are the Underdark race of mushroom people. And they look a lot like Slimefoot. The way they communicate is through telepathic spores that they send out through the air. They have no mouth. They have no ears. They can't communicate by slapping their meat together like we do. All right? That's what we're doing. We're just reverberating our vocal
slapping
cords.
Meat, y'all.
We're slapping meat back and forth. Yeah, when aliens come to this planet and they're metallic based or gas life forms, and they see us talking meat, what is this? A joke? No, that's us. But Slimefoot doesn't appear to have any mouth, doesn't appear to have any ears. There's no eardrum to bounce the sounds off of. So how does he communicate? I'm hoping it's telepathic spores. I'm hoping that they are able to send out communication spores into the air, and if he wishes to communicate with you, you hear his voice in your head, and vice versa. And that would make me very happy.
Who would it sound like?
Well, all I know...
Buscemi.
Oh my god! I mean, I'm glad it would. There's no genders. I think here because we don't
It's a
need
fungus.
any
They're
members. We're already
asexual.
slapping meat. It's the whole thing. It's a whole thing.
Funguses are asexual.
Funguses
Although
are among us.
it's probably a dude because he looks like a fun guy.
Oh my
Oh Jesus!
god!
No, but this card is a hit. My friend
Your
Chris
dad
built
called.
this-
He wants his joke back. All right.
My friend Chris built a Slimefoot deck with like Ashnod's Altar and Necrogenesis, and yeah, things got cray pretty quickly. And
This goes
yeah, I made
infinite
sure.
with Ashnod's Altar and any like doubling season or parallel lives.
Yeah, I made sure to have a copy of this card. Like once the sealed debuted on Moto, my friend Jamie Topples was playing online, and she had opened a Slimefoot, and I was like, "Can I get that Slimefoot off you, girl?" And she was like, "Yeah, you can have it." And so that was one of those cards like Muldrotha I made sure to get very, very early, and I'm just excited to do something with it.
That's awesome. Well, that also ends our top 10 Dominaria cards. You will see them right now on the screen for your review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, and Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we didn't talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-hosts. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you, Yar Goal.
Thank Yar Goal. That's right.
I'm not a Yar Goal.
We are the Magic Margles. All right. We're going to move on here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler, you guys for watching and listening, and I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Visit our website at magicmicspodcast.com or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, and do everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at Magic Mics, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, our Magic Mics subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast@libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week. Same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.